Almighty and ever-living God, ruler of all things in heaven and earth, hear our prayers for this parish family. Strengthen the faithful, arouse the careless, and restore the penitent. Grant us all things necessary for our common life, and bring us all to be of one heart and mind within your holy church, through Jesus Christ our Lord. Amen. Hope everybody had a chance to get some pie. You are welcome to get up as you need to get more pie or coffee. There's decaf and regular and real half and half. And then you'll see on your tables more pie. The theme this evening is pie. Pie chart. Yeah, very good, Joe. You caught on. The Vestry recently had a Vestry Retreat, and it was for them to spiritually prepare to work on the budget and to plan for 2022. And one thing that came out of that retreat was their desire to have more input, both theirs and the congregation's, into the budget planning process. We love the finance committee, we love their hard work, but the numbers go into that committee and they get crunched and munched and all sorts of things, and then it comes out as a budget. And so we'd like them to have more knowledge of and input from more people as they're crunching and munching on those numbers. So we want to hear what's important to everyone. We're not here to nitpick and micromanage over line items or to argue over how money was dealt with in the past. We are here to vision and look to the future and try to see what your priorities are as we move into 2022. You've heard the announcements on Sunday mornings, hopefully, that we've got a bigger hill to climb for 2022. On your tables are the pie charts from 2018 through 2021. So, and then there's a sample of 2022. Set that one aside right now. And there, you have to share. I'm sorry, we didn't want to use a whole lot of ink. You've got several tables with extras if you would want to grab a spare. But the idea here is for you to see the history of the pie and how the pie has been divided up over the last 4 years. 2021 is obviously we're still in it, so the numbers there are what's budgeted for the year. And 2022 is taking our 2021 budget, but extrapolating it to have a rector for the full year. And so it's a sample of what 2022 could look like if 2022 looked just like this year, but having me for all 12 months. So visually, you can glance across them and obviously see what the biggest expense item is for a church. It's people. The professionals that we have doing have as staff are the biggest piece of any budget. And that's just fact, but that is also ministry. That is part of our mission. We need those professionals, at least I hope you need me, to do what you want to do, what we want to accomplish. Next, on the pie is the physical plant. And so for that pie wedge, we added up everything that has to do with the buildings, the grounds, if we have to fix a furnace, if we have to, when we mow the lawn, something with the physical plant, we lumped it into that pie wedge. There are years when, like looking at 2020, that physical plant pie wedge was really big. I think something major broke that year
We hit the parking lot.
Ah.
And we didn't have other expenses. So
So, because you see the personnel wedge is much smaller, so therefore it could share the wedge over with physical plant. The apportionment wedge is what we send up forward to the diocese because we are the Episcopal Church. We are not a congregational church. We're not a free will something or a four square something. We are the Episcopal Church, which in and of its name means we're part of something much bigger. And so we are given a fair share apportionment from the diocese that will go up or go down depending on our income. So as it goes up, that's a good sign that it means things are growing. But that means it goes up. So we have to keep that in mind. And it is fixed. We have there's nothing we can do with that number. The administration wedge is the next one. And that was a little tricky as I was trying to divide things into personnel, apportionment, physical plant, formation, and liturgy, and we kept coming across these things. I'm like, well, that doesn't go in any of those. We realized there's a lot of miscellaneous. The postage, the supplies, the convention expenses for sending delegates. There's lots of different lines of varying sizes that we kind of lumped in there. So it's a miscellaneous administration. The formation is anything that has to do with our teaching programs. So whether that is Sunday school, adult education, vacation Bible school. You can tell that that's a really small wedge. But then even smaller than that is the liturgy pie slice. Our liturgy really doesn't cost us a whole lot in the grand scheme of things. Now that does not include the cost of our paid musicians, our music director and our paid voice, because that's personnel. But just the cost of liturgy is the smallest piece of our pie. So looking at how things have fluctuated over the last 4 years, you can see there's actually not a whole lot of fluctuation. I cannot speak to previous years, but I can tell you that we're running as tight as we can. And so there's not a lot of wiggle room. But that doesn't mean we still can't imagine and envision what could this look like. Obviously, we need a bigger pie to move things around a whole lot. To do something amazing with the physical plant takes an injection to make the pie bigger. We are getting ready next week, finally, after months and months of waiting on supplies that were on a slow boat from somewhere, we are getting new windows. If you have ever, and not all the windows, if you've ever walked around the church and looked, this half of the building approximately, I'm painting with a broad brush, this half has aluminum framed double pane windows. Thank God it's on the north. This half has single pane wooden frames that are not in good shape. Rotten frames, right. We could probably push really hard and knock several of them out. Those windows are getting replaced with aluminum frame double pane. It's going to, therefore, improve our efficiency. Then, this door, and I wish the sun was still shining so you could see how much sunlight comes in through this door. I can guarantee that there are probably woodland creatures that come through that door. I know we found, I swear, the biggest spider in the whole world a few months ago. Julia, yes. Jojo found it. We caught it in a cup, and we set it free outside. That was not the direction I was going to go with it. But it was huge, and I have no doubt it came through that big hole. That door will be fixed to look like this door. I was giving Deacon Dylan Green a tour of our church Sunday, and from the outside, I pointed to these double doors and said, yeah, those are probably original. He goes, oh, those are so cool. I said, Dylan, you are not allowed to speak when I'm fundraising to replace doors. They might look cool on the outside, but they definitely don't look modern. These improvements tell visitors that we care, that we're planning to be here, not that we're just holding on by our bootstraps. So that is the vestry approved that we take a temporary loan to go ahead and fund it all, and then we're going to seek sponsorships. I've had a great number of people already express that they plan on sponsoring a window in someone's memory or honor, so that we can then pay those off very quickly. But worst case scenario, if nobody donated a dime for the window, for the physical plant project, the annual payments on it are just a portion of our annual budget for the physical plant. But we have so many people that want to see this building beautiful and vibrant and look alive. It's looking alive on the inside on Sunday mornings. Don't know if you've noticed, but the size of the congregation attending doubles at announcements because of all those kids that come in. So things are alive and vibrant on the inside. We want them to look that way on the outside. So we can make the pie bigger, and that can do a lot more things. What I would like for you tonight, this is actually, dare I say, a craft project. Anybody that knows, Teresa, are you not laughing because I hate crafts?
It's not your talent.
It is not my talent. I got some help here. Bob and Bob, just because you have the same name, would you help me pass these out, please?
One person.
Yeah, one per person. Have Bob take us back.
Which end do you want?
The front side of this worksheet imagines that our personnel and apportionment, we're not going to change it. Now, things will change. We have a personnel subcommittee of the vestry that's working on kind of making sure we're in compliance of a whole lot of things, but also just looking at what we can do for some of the staff who have not received any kind of increases, no cost of living increases for over a decade. But imagining that personnel is fixed and apportionment is fixed, that's 70% of the 2022 budget. What would you do with the other 30%? Imagining the other categories of administration, the miscellaneous things, the formation, the liturgy, the physical plan. Oh, and I have markers. Oh, and Julie, I forgot to get crayons. You have things that you can draw your 30% of that pie.
Everybody have them?
I printed plenty so that folks on Sunday that weren't here could
Have fun.
have fun. See, at least 2 different colors there. Let's see. I don't have enough Sharpies for everyone. But the crayons are coming, if you're more of a crafty crayon person. This is a creative way to interact here with your, and I'd like you to talk on your tour amongst your table is a small group. I'd like you to think out loud. Asking questions of what you think about these different areas, or what you imagine could be done. Oh, I already came to your table, sorry.
Can I ask you a quick question?
Yes, questions. I am happy to have questions.
How much of the administration miscellaneous budget would you, just as a ballpark percentage, how much of that is kind of fixed? Because I know part of it is like convention expenses, et cetera. Is half of it fixed?
talking this over last night as I was brainstorming. Like I said, we're running on a shoestring, so I don't feel like we can cut a whole lot more. But I want you to tell me, like, if you think it's not important, then how big of that 30% would you like to see it be? I mean, we can stop printing. We can stop mailing. We could get much better about turning the lights on, quite frankly. And we could program the thermostats, be a little more efficient, but it's only a little squishy. Vestry members in finance, feel free to.
Electrical utilities come in under physical plan?
Yes.
Yes, physical plan.
So turn off the lights.
That would be physical plan, you're right, thank you.
Speaking of saving costs, may I let Lisa know?
Oh, yes, yes, since no nursery kiddos came.
Do the people that use our downstairs all week, do they pay us anything?
Yes,
Do
they
help
make,
with
yes, they all make monthly donations.
so that kind of covers the lights on down there?
Right, it's an income stream, if you will, a small one. Dale?
In your breakdown here on youth programs,
Mm-hmm, the formation?
yes, is that under formation?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, and that's not salaries, that is just the cost of the programming. Any curriculum we buy, any traveling, or things like that.
Lord,
Yes,
6% of administration is fixed.
6%, okay. So Vera has the numbers in front of her, so she's crunching them as you ask your question. So 6% of administration is solidly fixed.
That's what I thought, and it's
Just to clarify, 6%, the whole,
So
6% of our entire budget is fixed in administration. Not that the administration piece,
good math.
only 6% of that piece is fixed. It's, of the whole pie, 6% is fixed administration costs. Am I
Is that how you
understanding?
did the math? No, you divided it up.
I did that math wrong, it's 17%.
All right, 17, that sounds good.
Of just the gray area.
Of that
Just
slice.
the wedge,
So,
17%
of
of
the
that.
whole pie, it'd be, I don't know,
Very small.
1-2%.
Right. So, altar guild things for the altar guild are in liturgy. Adding brass to special services would be liturgy. I know it seems like, oh my gosh, how do you play with 30% of this? Well, I have good news. On the back side, you get to play with 100%. And I have model pie wedges I made for you. If you need help knowing how big a 10th of the budget is, or how big an 1/8 of the budget is, I could not freehand. I was not gonna ask anybody to freehand. But on the back side of the worksheet, if the front side is really befuddling you, which it did me, I went through this too. I wasn't putting you through anything I wasn't willing to do. How would you, if you were king or queen of the world, and we're not talking about how many dollars, but how would you break down the budget? What's your dream? That we put, that we have professionals in every area, that we have professionals running the, I don't know what other things we could hire, because I don't dream of hiring anything, but the personnel, if we hired other professionals, hired musicians, or not once in a while brass, but hired, musicians all the time. That would be under liturgy. If you think that liturgy is really important, then make that a bigger slice of the pie.
I thought you said we need grass, and I was wondering what you were talking about.
Brass. the mask took the brass and the grass.
Prefer just to be, get an online.
I think
Yes, please, this is a free for all.
the youth is our future,
And that's okay.
so we need to really enforce that.
I think you can.
So in the formation slice, the programming costs, or in the personnel slice, people costs. So that's tough to decide, well, how much would be what? We've got, Julia, would you say right now we have almost 40 names of kids that come at least more than once. But regularly, at least, I mean, just like all of you, half of you might come on any given Sunday. About half of the kids come on a given Sunday right now. But that's a lot of kids. We're looking, speaking of the kids, and this is part of the education piece of tonight. So we have 10 kids in the youth group right now. We have, they don't all come right now, but we got 10 there. And then next year, we're gonna have 2 kids graduate up from the 5th grade, from that massive group of kids that come into church at announcements. 2 of them will graduate up to youth group. So next year, the fall of 2022, we'll have 12 kids in the youth group. But then in the fall of 2023, how many come up then, Julia? 5 more go up. So then we're all of a sudden at 17 youth in the fall of 2023. And it just gets bigger from there. Because of the way that our children's population is broken down. So you're right, that is the future, literally.
And we have changes coming that are including kids more now that.
Right, we are including them. Hank?
If we have 10 kids that are active in that youth program, how come we can never get any of them to serve as acolytes?
Oh, that's a great question. And that's,
I mean, that's gotta be a good way of developing our youth,
right.
getting them involved in our service, and there's 1 or 2 that once in a while serve.
That is absolutely something that we've been talking about in the youth groups. I've joined Sydney and Matt in the youth formation and talking about their stewardship and what they can do and what they can sign up to help with. We've got several that are really nervous about being up front in front of people. We've got one that's super excited to help Tom run the audio visual stuff, the live streaming stuff. Like that's his passion. But we're going to have a training for acolytes, and they have all been invited on November 14th. So that hopefully, if they feel like they know what they're doing, they'll be willing to be up. And we're going to start having torches. We're going to have more people up there, so they aren't the only one up there that everybody's staring at. That's the fear, I think, for most teenagers.
Well, they need to understand there's not, the congregation does not put any pressure on the
Right.
acolytes.
I'm pretty gentle.
If they mess up something, nobody's booing them.
Part of the other thing with acolytes is, especially young men, one of the big things that happens that churches run into a lot with younger, with teenagers and younger people is that we also are competing on Sunday morning with sports and music programs.
Unfortunately.
And unless and there are times when you're not going to see anybody that plays soccer on Sunday morning, because that's when the games are.
And so that's the long game I'm playing, Hank, is trying to get them to choose church over other things. And Julia and the whole Sunday school crowd, Julia and Miss Hazel and Miss Tish, that's what, we've got so many kids there because they're committed to being here on Sunday mornings. And that population we're gonna protect that attitude and really nurture that, so they really want to.
And it's a difficult.
Devin, you had a question? Yeah. Oh, sorry. Oh, brilliant.
If you want us to talk.
Yeah, I do want you to talk.
I mean, those are questions for Jason and Laurie.
You're not calling on your pie, Jason. Are you anti-craft? If you were king, what would you do? There you go.
There may be some minimum
taxes
in there,
were significantly less than
That is one way to express yourself.
Or if that's they know is gonna
Did they discuss that at the convention? They seem to
what
always
they
do
have
that, right?
planned to replace. And then anything beyond that,
Well, it goes down quite a bit if
they'll
it's
ask for donation.
Oh, did I ask you that?
Could be
Oh, you didn't say that.
To me, the capital campaign, if capital campaign, we'd be like, we wanna renovate the church. We wanna put in all new carpet, we wanna paint the whole interior, we wanna, but if you have an AC unit goes out, or the dishwasher goes out, or things that just typically happen during the course of the year that you pay for, and that just becomes part of the budget. So that's a number that's not plugged in for annual, plant maintenance. I don't think that, I think that is just paying bills.
That's a great question.
Yeah.
I would like,
I don't think
I think we've got some big projects, but I believe those are gonna be self-funded
building
by
plans are
donations for those projects. So I would like to see the physical plant specifically our water plant. Is there something we can do differently with our landscape so that we're not spending $800 a month on water?
There's like a 20 timetable that we did, and they're all those
And we've been told there
expenses are in
can't be,
there.
but that's the direction.
I don't
That's
think
what
that
I'd like to
factor into the budget.
Well, what's the difference here in 2022? How much is there for planned?
65.
Yeah,
I
it's
don't think
exactly
that's
the
probably just
same.
energy costs increasing.
Yeah, that's exactly.
Joe had 353.
That's exactly what, we are fixing, because it is wrong. Because maintenance has, the physical plant at some point in history, no money was spent on it. Right? I watched those. What a great question. Where's outreach?
We've got our own.
This is a question worthy of
When they
all.
did the budget there, they budgeted.
Someone asked, where is outreach on our pie? Bum, bum, bum. There is no outreach in our budget.
30,000 a year to just pay.
What little outreach we've got is under other ministries, which is very minimal.
Right. The different groups do outreach, so consider that as you are deciding what, as king and queen, you would do.
What queen and the king.
Well, when we first started to do this 30%.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, there's no token amount budget.
Do we not?
Personnel.
He
said administration was miscellaneous.
I'd like a better understanding of.
So let's reduce administrative, whatever, supplies.
Given $60,000 to the year.
That is great. I'm gonna put that. It does. Together and then let the free-for-all start, because then they start full. Mike and I will talk about it.
I think we're missing the boat. I think we should be talking about how to raise money.
2 more minutes, and then we have a question that I want to address to the whole group.
This 30% here is all there. I think this
But if you would reduce one section, what would it be?
Right?
And I suppose, well, yeah, but you can't that. Don't we wish?
And if we want to read,
The only thing I would add is,
become an Anglican church.
And why do they ask so much? We're all just trying to make it. I mean, do we have to do that much?
Bishops cost a lot of money, that church up there, all the staff they have.
Yeah, exactly, but we're here.
At the recent clergy gathering that Deacon Bob and I went to, we learned, there was a slight mention, we didn't learn how to do it, but, water farming.
Evidently.
Harvesting the water that's coming off our, we've got a massive roof. All we need is a cistern to connect, we aren't allowed to pump out of the creek, but we can pump out of a cistern.
It's not our.
I don't see, look, I mean, I don't see.
And it's, and to be quite honest.
I don't either.
And,
I'm gonna increase it. I don't want to
It's, we're noticing down to ban that. But truly, that would be.
Hey, Vera.
have kids.
And even if we had a goal in 5 years, by it going down.
I'm sorry.
Substantial amount of money.
I held
People that have
the
children.
chart marking the chart.
So,
Your life
a really important question
to increase your pledge.
was about apportionment. When I said there's no outreach in our budget, Mr. Hosley pointed out, the apportionment is outreach to the greater church. And you're absolutely right. So he asked, what do we get for being a part of the diocese? And I can tell you I'm in a number of small groups with clergy from other parts of the country. And we have a really stellar diocese for parish support. The youth programs of the diocese, which we can help get our youth more trained up in the Episcopal way. We have a youth missioner, the campus ministries, of which the new young adult Wichita that Deacon Dillon talked about on Sunday is part of. Then Help Me Mike from Council of Trustees. We, what else we get? I mean, programmatically or whatever. The Minster and the Minster grant money that goes directly to outreach.
One thing to understand too is, as we pay apportionment to the diocese pays apportionment to the national church. So those monies go to a lot of international programs across the world, programs within the Anglican Communion for outreach. And so that's the vehicle for those monies, particularly for overseas projects. We fund the staff at the diocese, including the bishop, the canon of the ordinary, a new spiritual director who will be doing retreats for us all over the diocese, which is going to be a real plus, I believe. The youth college and young adult programs, of course, and just various, we have a person who does congregational support, Cardino, helps with that. We pay him to provide support for congregations. The youth programs are really critical because, we've got, 6, 8, 10 kids here. Having a diocesan youth program allows for a lot of stuff to be done for the kids that we could not do with the limited number of kids and budget we have. I think up there is probably a list of some of the youth programs, but they have like 8, 10, 12 programs a year, including summer camp. And that's funded through diocesan monies. And I think if you talk to the kids, you're gonna find those programs are really important to them and play a meaningful part in their lives. Many of the kids who go through the youth program end up in the college and young adult programs because of that formation they got while they were kids.
Thank you.
And Canterbury House is a part of that.
Right, so if they go to KU or K-State, they have a house to live in.
Is there any
Well,
concept of what
just a point. Take care of
percentage of
Or
that?
what do they have in the summer for the kids?
Love the whole bunch.
So it's not as much as
What's the
it
one
looks.
where they're reading?
Mikra.
Mikra.
Mikra is where they study the Bible.
Yes, so
Martin
does
Luther
it
King
take care of that?
and read, yes. Yeah, that's
So
all.
those kind of youth programs that we wouldn't have right here,
Right.
would be in the summer or sometime.
And
Just about.
Yeah,
these
some of it
40
does
kids
go there.
that are getting really committed
Yeah.
to doing things that we schedule at
Bishop
church,
Seabury Academy in Lawrence, which is a
they're
private
going to
Episcopal
get,
school,
be the ones that
which
we
we
will
provide
lift
also
up, and
support
that
for
will
them
go to
in
each of
Lawrence
these
as
events.
well.
And these events form them as
So
a,
yeah, those
not only
monies
as
do
Christians
go
and disciples,
back
but as
into the community.
Episcopalians. And that's
As
how
well
they
as
become the
the
future
national, money goes to the national church, which goes to overseas ministries, as well as ministries within this country, like to Native American programs.
Hey, Laurie,
and
Laurie, we
various other
can't hear
ministries.
because there are two conversations going on at the same time.
Okay. Yeah, because
We have one.
Stop the
person talking
free-for-all.
at a time.
You're in charge.
I'm in charge? Okay, I gotta come back.
Well, I
Okay.
mean, I'll be honest.
Mike, I'm sorry, I'm gonna pause, we'll talk about the diocese, we have, someone talking about happening in the youth program and how important it is.
Give me a mic.
Yeah, I don't need the mic, I'm pretty loud. I was just, we had commented at our table, you know, with a parish of this size and a youth group of the size that we have, the diocesan youth programs are good, like I participated as a youth. They're meaningful, she mentioned Mikra, and I think it's a way, you know, we were talking about this type of church is never gonna compete with a New Spring, you know, it's never gonna compete with the Catholic churches where my friends that are Catholic, their kids all play Catholic sports together, you know, as they come up into Cape Bend and Carroll, they've played Little League basketball together since they were 3. But those programs that we have as a diocese are a way that we can foster a community that's statewide for youth, to kind of expand the Episcopal community for the youth. And I think that's meaningful, hopefully.
Thank you, Brad. There was another question, so what was, let's continue.
We were just talking about that maybe what
Yeah.
percentage of.
And, I mean, I can, I think our diocesan budget is about 1.4, 1.5 million.
Yeah.
I know that over 200,000 of that is for youth and young adult ministries, for example.
But you're also saying some of that comes back to actual Wichita
Right.
Yes.
to Venture House.
Yes.
Breakthrough, Nourish KC, which is in Kansas
That'd be
City.
kinda interesting. to know
Yeah.
kind of-
Yeah, the outreach that comes from the diocese, they've got a fund specifically that is going to, Breakthrough Venture House. And then $10,000 is being injected directly into our Minster for the Minster outreach grant. And if you have any ideas for how to spend actually, I think we're down to $7,000 between now and December 31st. Talk to your Minster representative over there.
Well, and just to clarify on that, St. Stephen's has actually had multiple grants that we have requested and have been funded or are being considered, that several thousands of that 10,000 have come sort of back to St. Stephen's in the form of outreach dollars.
Yeah.
So
Example?
Amanda Shield came up with a good idea of doing birthdays in a box for the kids that are
Big brothers, big sisters,
well,
and
it
then
was
the food
the
pantry.
Wichita is the food pantry.
Yeah, it's the food pantry because they don't, a lot of times people who use the food pantry don't have money for extras for birthdays for their children. So we've applied for a grant or talked about applying for a grant to, you know, get a birthday cake mix, get a pack of candles, get some party hats and party favors, get some linens, some paper linens. So maybe this child whose family can't really do much for them on their birthday can do a little bit extra without having to be stretched thinner. So we're talking about that.
And so that's currently in front of the Minster to do sort of this outreach program that is more than just St. Stephen's, it's all the 5 Episcopal churches but the idea generates from a parishioner here at St. Stephen's. Similarly, there was a pitch from Patsy Abshire, also Laura White, and the late Paul Masseria to get some funds from the grant relative to funding their outreach, food outreach relative to Episcopal Social Services. And so there's things that St.
Yes.
Stephen's parishioners are doing that are making this outreach and tapping into that, those funds that are going to the diocese and then coming back to us.
So being creative is how we're getting outreach out of this parish. And somebody pointed out, all of the people that donate directly to organizations that are members of this congregation, that's something that Jason has been talking about. We want to know about your involvement in other organizations, so we can kind of make this chart of look at the outreach, how far the reach is of St. Stephen's into Wichita. There was a question about, do we see the physical plant wedge going down? And this brings to my mind that we've got some big projects that are going to be coming. Yes, Joe?
Going up.
And I believe we're going to have to do those through special funding, special fundraising. A capital campaign is probably in our near future. So outside of this pie, there's going to be another pie for some of those big projects. But the annual running of our physical plant, did you know that one month this summer we paid over $800 for water? I think we can probably get creative. We can look into how can we do things differently to bring the physical plant wedge down a little bit so that some of these other wedges can get bigger. But we've got to be creative, just like we're creative in how we make outreach happen. What are some other areas that you all in your small groups talked about that you'd really like either to mention the importance of it to, or ask questions about? Hank, you've had great questions tonight.
He's got another one.
Maybe it's just a personal feeling, but I think it's a terrible waste, all the printing we do when we have all these books of common prayer that we could use. I would much rather have a one-page bulletin that listed what page we needed to follow in the Book of Common Prayer instead of all the massive amounts of printing that we do all the time. On the other hand, to make it more of a family, I'd like to be able to look every week and see whose birthdays and whose anniversaries there were. I think it's really sad that we quit printing that. I realize it's on the internet, but I don't carry a computer in
Right.
church service.
I do.
I know you do, but you wouldn't be happy if I was.
Actually, I would like to see people live tweeting and doing things in the service more, because that really drums up our algorithms. But printing is a common complaint. When my first Sunday at an Episcopal church, I was utterly lost and confused, balancing two different hymnals and a prayer book. And so my passion for hospitality is one reason we have the service printed, but you know, we only printed that twice this summer. Like, we used that all of the green season. We used one for half of it, and we changed the music up and used the other one for half. So trying to do, there's another Episcopal congregation that prints the whole service every Sunday. So I figure
And it's different for
every service. And so I feel like we've taken a step in the right direction. So balancing that hospitality of wanting this to be utterly welcoming for somebody that knows nothing about our liturgy, but cutting the printing, it is definitely a balance now. Karen?
Well, I've always wondered why we couldn't have 15 programs for people who needed it, and those of us who don't, use the prayer book.
That's a great idea.
Just to put this in perspective, and Hank, I'm with you, I have felt the same thing. And Vera knows, on the finance committee, Mr. Hart is a total, like, why is the printing going up? And I will tell you that printing in our total budget, it's like $1,900. It is extremely small part of our overall budget, and
But it's still part of the budget.
it is, no, I agree.
It's still, and I can tell you, the first time my wife and I ever went to an Episcopal service, we had a little print that told us how to use the Book of Common Prayer, and we followed the service that way. If people can't do that, you know, we've got real problems.
Well, and the great thing is, you use the Book of Common Prayer, sometimes you find something that you weren't looking for, and it's really interesting or helpful.
Yeah.
An Episcopal congregation in the Kansas City area went to iPads.
Yep.
They invested in enough iPads that everything is electronic. I mean, some people bring their own.
Yeah, that's true.
I can't remember, do you remember how many they have in the back? But the whole, because at General Convention, all the worship services are on the iPad, so that you turn the pages.
And you can pull it up on your
You
phone.
can use your phone for it as well. So that's an investment they decided to do, and they don't print anything on Sunday morning.
Mother Laurie, how much do we spend on advertising?
I have paid for, some odds and ends out of my discretionary fund, like I've been willing to pay for a banner or something like that, but we don't spend anything on advertising. We depend on your mouths to give us free advertising. Kevin?
So if this, of this 27,700, only 1,000 of it is printing and it's not Vera's salary, what is it? What else is in there? Postage?
No, it's not 27,000.
No. You've got,
We've got, okay, convention expenses, well, the budget is 1,000. The accounting firm, that gives us the compilation audit, couple thousand.
Leased equipment?
Boy, we only spend 100 on Vestry. Bank fees and filing fees is $500. Workers' comp insurance is in that administration. The audio-visual virtual expense, we haven't actually, let's see, year to date, we've only spent 200, but there's a $1,000 line item. Supplies are 2,200, postage is 2,000, the telephone internet, is 4,000. That's coming down, by the way.
yes,
We cut our phone bill
almost a half.
almost a half.
How?
Because they made it, no. We switched from a traditional landline to voice over IP.
Yeah, good for you.
So say we're looking where we can cut,
You're not
my
anywhere
moving
equivalent to
expenses.
27,000 so
Hey,
far.
where are the, printing, the equipment lease, what's the equipment lease?
That's your copier.
Copier, okay.
And it used to be the phone
Well,
system,
that's
which
part
we
of
don't do anymore.
printing cost.
Right, that was, last year, that was 8,000, just the equipment.
But even if you don't print every day, you still have to have the copier.
Yeah, we got it.
But it can be cheaper than that.
It's only, it's or 0.7 cents a page to print.
We never bought copiers.
That equaled 22,000. Some of the, continuing education, so my continuing education, some of this should have been put into personnel, so that's a great, I'm glad you asked. So the pension expense, health insurance, that's really a personnel expense.
That is in personnel.
Oh, that is in personnel, never mind, then what else?
It goes from supplies down to audiovisual.
Okay,
And totally, the administration, that is only 8% of the total budget.
yeah, so lots of miscellaneous things.
Copy, what about the coffee hour, is that administration?
That is fellowship, and
That's in
yes, we included that
It's in formation.
Formation.
Okay.
Yeah, we had to make some tough calls on that. So fellowship stuff went in formation.
Haven't had much coffee though lately.
No.
Yeah,
It used to be huge expense. I got the coffee, we just need to make it.
Yeah. Well, it sounds to me like, rather than figuring out how we can cut or expand these pieces of pie, we need to just figure out how we can raise more money.
Right.
bingo.
We need more money.
You know?
Give that girl a.
But truly
You
watch.
beat me to the punch.
I had my hand up.
I mean, there's no way to
I mean-
cut any of it.
So,
We don't have a spending problem.
I've been
We
to
have a trending
10,
Giving problem.
vestry meetings, and there is not a penny in that budget that's not micromanaged by everyone on the vestry and accounted for. There is no, I mean, yeah, you might save a little bit on the phone, you might save a little bit on the water bill, but the bottom line is, how do we increase the revenue? 'Cause
So
you're not
that is-
gonna cut this by $100,000.
So that is why I invited you to dream how
Unless
you
you
would like the
cut
money
her.
to be spent. Right, I mean,
It really boils down to.
right,
Mother Laurie
it
or-
comes down to
Do we
me
have a
being here or
church
me
or
not being here.
not?
And,
But dreaming, I mean,
Maybe that's why we do need to advertise.
Well, I actually think that special projects sell.
yeah,
And that's a case of us, I mean, we're here, we see what needs to be done, and if, just like the windows,
yeah.
I think that we should have just special fundraising for projects. And people see the results of that. So, you know, like you're saying, I agree completely, there's nothing to be done with this budget. I respect what you do, the vestry and everybody else, because they manage it well. I mean, we're not overspending.
Well,
But we need to find ways to raise for special projects, I think.
and another thing I can see, because years ago I was on a trustee group and, we had to replace windows and stuff. And have a special project and even have a project committee
Right.
to investigate and go through where you know you're getting the most bang for your buck, where you know it's not random, where people, if they wanna know what's going on, they know the committee, they know the people on it, and it's not just for a few, because if you're coming in and you're seeing things being done, you wanna get involved, but
Right.
if you can't get involved, you're stuck.
It works on growing the congregation's
Yeah.
involvement as well. So I had hoped to get to this before 8, and I apologize. But I would love, for the last 5 years, I oversaw a golf fundraiser that raised about $15,000 a year. I don't have that energy now that I'm managing a much bigger congregation. But would someone be interested in putting together a golf tournament? Would somebody be interested in, I know these are tricks, but they also create that involvement
and fellowship.
and fellowship and inviting people. But they do bring money in, and they can be targeted towards a project.
What about a pickleball tournament?
Yes, I saw that. I saw a sign for who's doing it. Somebody's doing a fundraising pickleball tournament. I go, oh my gosh, that sounds like so much fun.
I wish the children's zone was over there.
So, but we
But
need.
can we combine some of these projects? I just don't want there to be a special fundraiser every month.
Right.
I think it's a priority.
People will get burned out on fundraisers.
What
It's gonna
if-
be nickel and dime.
What if socially, what if we create social occasions that then raise funds for the church?
What
and the
do we
mission?
make on the ice cream social though?
That's not a moneymaker.
it pays for itself, but we raised,
Yeah,
Act-
$1,200.
That's a special event.
On top of
Having
it.
served on boards that do fundraisers, you
Yeah.
don't really make any money. It's a special event when you throw a gala and actually make any money.
So, it seems to me that what we've seen lately, that what puts more money in the budget are more people in the church,
You've gotta attract membership.
and you've gotta attract membership that pledges and gives. And we have had, since Mother Laurie showed up, a number of new families show up, and we have expanded our congregation, even though we've also lost some members for various reasons. But growing growing the membership is probably the biggest and best way that we can do that, and I think one of the best ways that we can grow membership is through the social things that get people engaged and get them involved. And I know,
It don't cost something because they're self-funded.
well, maybe, I mean, but doing those, you know, when we did the way that they did the fundraiser, with the bouncy house and all this stuff.
The ice cream social?
Yeah, the ice cream social, I mean, that was a thing, I don't know that it brought anybody new in, but it was certainly a thing. I think, I mean, you said it in your interview of, hey, I'm the sheepdog, you're the sheep. I don't make sheep, you guys make the sheep. And we gotta do a better job of attracting and inviting and getting folks coming in, and I'm not sure exactly how.
It's like events for the community. If you have a big like a picnic or something like that, you'll get them coming just for the food and
If
stuff.
people aren't inviting somebody to come to church on Sunday morning, maybe they would invite a friend to come to an event.
I think that's easier, is to invite somebody to an event versus to invite somebody to the church.
How many of our new members have come from people inviting friends, and how many are organically coming from the community?
So, the 9 families that have come this year, one family, and one of the bigger families, came because they're friends of a friend of mine who told them, hey, she started in Wichita, and they're disenfranchised Catholics, so she sent them over here. I know one family came because they were invited by Teresa, and then they invited another family. There's a bunch of collegiate connections that I don't know if there was direct invitation, but there was at least a reputation that brought them.
Well, it was you.
So I guess I'm also kind of wondering, I don't know if this avenue has been explored before, but could we put some sort of sign out on Rock Road or Central so that way?
Unfortunately, the city of
church is here?
Wichita does not allow it.
Been there, tried that 100 times.
It is
sign
aggravating.
ordinance.
Talk to your city, your
Alright.
great idea. We love that idea. We loved it so much.
This church in particular is hidden, and you are not gonna find it
If Homer had to do it over, he would have built the church out there on Central.
Yeah.
That's right.
Julia, we're gonna start wrapping this down.
Well, and one thing, before we talk about just adding people, just getting bodies in here without having that opportunity of connection. I know I've heard from several parents of the young families that they don't have an opportunity right now to get to know us. And we've talked several times in these discussions about how St. Stephen's is special because of the people and because of our relationships and our intergenerational relationships. And you start just talking about growing, you're gonna force it, and those connections aren't gonna be formed, and people aren't gonna be motivated to pledge and come back as much. We've got a bunch of people still, if you look at our directory, that they haven't come back. Maybe they found something else to fill their Sundays during COVID. Maybe they're still scared of the COVID numbers and they aren't back. But we have our own sheep right now that are lost, that if you know of somebody who's in our directory that's not coming right now, what a great resource that already has ties and understands the importance of our church and maintaining our church. Reach out to your peers, reach out to your friends and say, hey, come to church with me. There's all this stuff going on. Hey, I haven't seen you in a year, or I've only seen you on Facebook, but I haven't actually seen you in the pews. What's going on? Or it seems like your schedule, you're coming a lot less. What can I do to help? You know, I mean, I think these are a lot more meaningful ways to grow the numbers in the pews and grow our tithes than just, let's find random bodies to bring in off of Rock Road that I think would have more staying power.
The invitations are important, both to those already connected and to those not connected.
When is the diocese or whoever gonna let us do coffee hour afterwards?
been allowed since June. And I talked about it and nobody signed up. Vera made coffee a bunch of Sundays in a row, and I was like, all right, it's allowed.
Get the young people that have started to come.
It's totally
feel like
allowed. We just need sheep to say, I'll sign up for a Sunday.
Can we do that ABC thing we did before where Alphabet does this week?
We sent a notice out and asked people to sign up. We've sent it out and that told them to do it alphabetically. We put it on the bulletin board.
It doesn't mean we can't try again, but I'm just saying, it has been allowed, and I would
don't
love
remember
to
it
see
being a
coffee.
sign up, it was like, it's our week, so I go do it.
Oh, we just assign you.
We have a coffee morning
And maybe it's
on
something,
Sunday
the 8:30 group has had coffee hour every Sunday.
at 8:45.
I want to hit Hank and then Teresa, and then I've got, I want closing remarks from the Vestry members that wanted this input. Hank.
I think one reason some of our actual members are not coming to church is because of the mask requirement. Yeah, and who's comfortable wearing a mask?
I've gotten there.
And
Yeah.
is there any way we could go back to the divided congregation where, you know, people that are fully vaccinated can be in one part of the church without a mask? There's gotta be some solution to it, because there's no doubt that COVID is being very hard on church attendance.
Let me pull up today's number. Go ahead, Teresa, and I'll tell you what our color code is today.
Well, one of the things I was gonna say along those lines is that starting mid-November, supposedly, we'll be able to start seeing vaccinations for our younger kids.
Starting tomorrow.
Starting tomorrow.
Tomorrow, vaccinations for 5 to 11-year-olds open in
Right.
Sedgwick County. And the more people get vaccinated, then the lower our numbers go, our case numbers go, and we can stop being in code red. Darn it, we're still in code red this week.
Yeah,
We're so close, we're so close. Then it's
This
lifted.
isn't horseshoes.
You have to understand though, you're competing with church communities that don't require these restrictions. How inviting is it? My 4-year-old doesn't want to put a mask on, so we haven't come because she doesn't want to wear a mask. And, I mean, I understand the reason for the policies, but you have to understand that there are church communities, my parents' church, they're not doing that, and some people don't want it, and it's gonna run the risk of driving people away.
I struggle every day at this, and we're not gonna totally turn the train here. I struggle, and it is not easy, and there are reasons that the suicide rate of clergy has skyrocketed in this last year.
It's true, it has.
It really has.
That's pretty dark, Mother Laurie.
I know,
It's pretty
I'm
dark.
sorry, I took a dark turn.
We need to talk.
Yeah, we need to. The Vestry members that wanted this, to get some feedback. I'd like you to close it out with things you want these folks to know that have given of their evening to share their feedback and ask questions.
I guess I'll start. Thank you for coming. I see several people here that I haven't seen for a minute, and it's so good to see you all. And if you hear things, because I see a lot of different groups of people that associate with smaller groups of people within our church. If you hear anything, talk to us. Let us know what you would like to see on the budget. Let us know if you have questions before, questions when you get it. We're always happy to talk with you. So thank you.
I would just say, I'm glad we had this session, and I think we kind of quickly arrived that, you know, the real need is to increase membership and increase giving. And I don't know if this helps somebody else, but, you know, I thought long and hard about increasing my pledge. And what helped me is, I don't know, it's a very small way to think about it, but I've always thought about it, you know, giving my money or donating my money to the church. And it occurred to me, like, you know, I'm really bringing my offering to St. Stephen's. I come with it. So I don't know if that's somebody that frame it a little differently, at least it did for me to think my money and myself, into God's presence at St. Stephen's.
Where are we right now?
Move your, Laurie, move your cup, there you go.
We are almost to 200,000. The goal being, overshooting a little, but, 350 is what we need to aim for.
400.
That's where we are at, and we still have quite a few outstanding pledge cards.
And I can tell you from, because I do the big spreadsheet every day, I sweat every envelope. Lori almost gave me a heart failure when she locked them in a box and I couldn't look at them.
To add them up and
But I
start
gotta tell
coloring in
you,
the
we've got quite a few that have increased their pledge, and we've got several new pledges, which makes my heart beat. So,
Keep it beating, we've lost enough people already.
Yeah, don't need any more people.
People from dying.
Yeah.
The colors are just like the first
Oh,
each
okay.
injection, every time we open envelopes. Yeah.
That's right.
And Laurie,
I like to make it pretty.
one of the things I think is helpful, and I know it's added to Vera's thing, but I think seeing where we're at during our pledge drive in the bulletin every week helps. We have so many traditional pledges that have not come in yet. We have this is our full number, this is our goal. I think people need to see it. It needs to be in front of us. Because pledging is new for a lot of people. And pledging gets kind of confusing for some because it's a different mindset.
Right, it's like the bringing versus donating.
Yeah.
We've got, 2 more vestry members here, Joe
Who else needs to go?
and Dorinda.
Go ahead, Dorinda.
Oh, well, I just want to thank everybody for coming too. This is all new to me. I mean, I've been on the vestry now, this is my 2nd term, but I've never been so involved in.
Talking about.
Yeah, exactly. So, I think this has been a great experience.
Joe, bring it home.
I've forgotten your name and I apologize.
Teresa?
No, your husband.
Nobody
We,
asks.
the Vestry undertook a process this summer where we hired a local contractor who actually did the renovation project here probably 20, 25 years ago. And they came and did a building assessment on the entire building. So there is a plan of what they anticipate needs to be spent to keep the plant facility to where we can occupy and be proud of it. So, and it's not a massive amount of money, but it's something, me as a vestry person and thinking like a businessman, which unfortunately my brain just works that way. In theory, those should be in this budget, and they're not, okay? I mean, in theory, what you need to do to upkeep a plan needs to be in a budget. But we know that that's difficult to do, so doing the ask route, we feel is an appropriate way to do that. But those numbers are those expenditures and those particular projects are all in this document that we had done. So I think at the annual meeting, that's something that the junior ward needs to put that out in front of the membership so people can see what's coming down the road in the way of some expenditures to keep up the plan here. And I think as we discussed at our table here, we have a new priest. We want to keep her. I think everyone's gonna have to dig a lot deeper and figure out a way how we're gonna be able to afford this. And the very easy math, and I think Jason should be able to help out, and Vera, we just look at what's been given in the past, the number of pledging units divided into the number, and what's that equate to this year? And if it's $7,000 is the average pledge, I'm just throwing numbers out, And you multiply that times what we anticipate receiving this year, and you're short $50,000 or whatever the number is, that you do the math.
I can
And
give you the
everybody-
math.
Everybody's gotta step up, and otherwise, we go back to asking if Father Milliken can come back and be our supply priest, and we just kinda,
And his answer on that is already no.
what's that? And I don't think that's where we wanna go, so.
Last year we had
So I think the reality is not only that, but what's it gonna take to get to the top, and what's that mean to every pledging member of this community? What is their what their additional ask themselves, and to ask their family, what's that gonna take so we can get to that number? Cause there's no fluff in those numbers, and there are a lot of people sitting around this room that've been on the vestry and know that there's not a lot of fluff in there, so.
Go ahead.
How blessed we are not to have $100,000 a year mortgage payment.
Yeah.
Amen.
So,
Last year, there were 71 pledging units
71?
last year. And so the math would divide out to $4,929.58 per pledging unit.
So, yeah,
There are many-
that may not be the right math. but
There
it-
are many blessed saints of this congregation that give way more than that, and for them, I am eternally grateful.
So you may have to figure out how to articulate that better than I did, but that's what I see it coming down to at the end of the day is, and maybe it's a special ask, that we're short this much, and who can step up and help fill the void? That may be the other
And
alternative.
we've done that in a couple of years, and everybody has stepped up. I think we did it a couple of years ago.
I think the question though is not how many pledging units did we have last year?
Right.
It's how many do we realistically anticipate this year?
Right.
Based on all the circumstances and potential loss of membership.
Yeah, I thought I said that, but I probably
Sorry.
didn't.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's,
Do we have
how do we get to that number, and what's
we
that
have-
increase?
So, not every, if you guys wanna talk more about this, I'm happy to, but there's a lot of, I think Mother Laurie's wrapping things up, and I don't wanna stall her out. But I will happily answer some of those questions to the best of my ability, cause it is a very interesting conversation, but I won't draw it out.
We won't open the can yet today.
We'll need to have that discussion with you before the next vestry meeting.
That's what our meeting's for, on the 15th.
How many pledges have we received?
55.
55, so this represents 55.
And I can tell you by looking at my list, I still feel we've got about 20 to come. That I know.
Probably won't make up that.
No,
No.
it won't.
That'd be 200 or 15, 10.
I think there's another 100,000 sitting out there.
From these 20.
Mike, you're the other vestry person in the room. I'm like, there was the 1, 2, 3, I was counting and counting.
I just want to thank everyone for coming, and also, don't hesitate to contact me or any of us if you have questions or comments or thoughts. Because, we're here to give you any information you may need that may help you in understanding the budget process. And so, yeah, don't hesitate to ask.
Yeah, I want to say one other thing, because I think there are a lot of people in this room that can resonate with this, but we have in the bank what's it called, a reserve fund. It's kind of like a savings account that's roughly $60,000, $60,000. And it's a prudent thing for any nonprofit, church, business that needs to have excess cash on hand in excess of what their monthly expenses are. And as long as I'm on the vestry, that's almost like you can't touch that, okay? We have to figure out a way how to pay the bills. That's our number one objective there. So I wanted to kind of let that out.
We need 6 months.
And Mother Laurie was here when St. Albans was sold, and that money came over to this church. That money's gone.
And that was on the diocese, instructed it couldn't become an endowment. It needed to be spent for new ministries, and that's what paid for me the last one.
Right, and that's.
And it is gone.
Yeah,
Right.
and that's
That's
gone.
why I had to leave.
So, could we take that money, could we tap that money and use that money to cover the gap?
Did that.
We could,
that should
but I've
say-
been there and I've seen, and that was like $400,000, not 60, a lot of money, and it was spent over however many years, but it's zero now. So I'm, I'm of the type, I'm pretty conservative, and we have a fiduciary responsibility here as vestry members, that, we gotta figure out how to get there, so.
The Lord be with you.
Also with you.
God, you have bound us together in a common life. Help us in the midst of struggles and conflicts to confront one another without hatred or bitterness, and to work together with mutual forbearance and respect. Through Jesus Christ our Lord. Amen.
Amen.
I deeply apologize for making you do crafts. It was fun conversation, and I am sorry that we went so long. Leave your crafts behind if you actually visioned on them,
No, that was.
and then take any